Our next speaker is Koren. He's an expert in the application of instrumental chemistry to identify organic plants and animal-based colorants. So, Zvi.
Thank you, Paula. Let me get the share screen on. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, here we are in Portugal. First thing before I start, I would just want to say, Boa tarde, Portugal. I hope I pronounced it okay. And I will talk about shades of purple. This is my favorite topic. As many of you know, I have analyzed many dyes, but there's nothing like the purple. Purple is the dye of dyes and is most difficult to dye with it. It has many biochemical challenges in order to dye with it. So in this talk, it will not be an encyclopedic talk, of course. I will not be discussing actually 50 shades of purple, but a number of shades of purple from the plant world and animal kingdom, and brought to you in a live broadcast straight from Israel. So let's start. First of all, the talk is based on a paper I recently published, a long paper in a chapter in a book on archaeological chemistry. It dealt with archaeological purples. And if you write to me, I'll send you the PDF. You'll see where to get it. It talks about all types of purples from the ancient Near East. And specifically, I will be talking about the purples from my own firsthand experience from ancient Israel. And just to give you an archaeological map of Israel, just to show you where we are, you could see Tel Aviv right in the Mediterranean, archaeological map of Israel to locate Jerusalem over here. But the main action is, as you have predicted, is around the Dead Sea. Now, some of the sites, some of the famous sites, of course, are Qumran, in the north of the Dead Sea, where the Dead Sea Scrolls, of course, were found. And another site, Masada, another very famous Herodian site from the 1st century BCE, 1st century CE, and along that period. King Herod was in the reigned in Judea from about 40 BCE to about 4 BCE. Masada and Ein Bokek, also along the Dead Sea, and Ein Rachel, south of the Dead Sea. The word Ein is springs, the waters of Bokek, and the springs Ein Rachel, the springs of Rachel, if you would like. So let's take a look at where we are. First of all, what is purple? I'm sure many of you have a concept of what may perhaps be purple. Well, just to start the show, Merriam-Webster says having a color between red and blue, okay, and Collins, a dark color that is a blend of red and blue, okay. Now, to give you some ideas of what is purple, I actually like the Wikipedia entry, purple. It pretty much tells you what they think, what the author is purple, and I believe so. First of all, it shows this very famous piece of detail from various panels, a large artistic work, popes and bishops, and you can see brownish purple from 1432, a nice brownish purple. But then again, you have these nice flowers, also can be considered purple. And let's not forget, oops, I don't want to be in her hat, Queen Elizabeth II. Beautiful outfit, nice matching hat with the wardrobe. I love that. And this is a picture, by the way, taken in 2015, and Queen Elizabeth II. It probably will be the same picture when she lives till 2115. She will outlive us all, I believe. Another purple, Alaskan sunset. Again, nice purples. And of course, the purple or bluish grapes. All of this can be considered in the general sense of purple, and actually that's what I'll be talking about. the reddish purple hues or colors, and the bluish purples. Now, those of you who've done dye analyses, or if you haven't done dye analyses, the history is that in the beginning of dye analyses, there was, and for any analysis, I guess, there was a need to destroy relatively large amounts of the fabric. It was ultra destructive test, as this mad scientist will show you. But in today's instrumental analyses, if you can see the sample with a magnifying glass, as Dr. Sherlock and Dr. Holmes over here show us, the most information, the most detail you can get is micro-destructive. I even call it nano-destructive tests. You can actually do analyses, you'll see in a second, HPLC analyses, from a single fiber, not a thread, a single fiber, which is relatively invisible to the naked eye, as this slide shows you. But under a microscope, you can see that fiber. You can do analyses. One of the publications I did in a British art headquarters in Antwerp on such a item, dissecting the textiles, which was very, very important, but very laborious. Now, all of this is basically a field of microscale archaeological chemistry, and you can do lots of nice dye extractions, but the workhorse, as I mentioned, is HPLC, high performance liquid chromatography, which works with high pressure, of course, and you need a detector to detect the dyes as they come out of the instrument. Basically a UV vis detector called a PDA, photodiode array detector. I don't want to go into all of the details involved over here, but many of you may have used other techniques, SIRS and Raman and fluorescence. They're wonderful. But the most information, ladies and gentlemen, is a destructive analysis, but again, nano-destructive with HPLC. To give you an idea, what does HPLC do for you? Well, it gives you a chromatographic property. What is the chromatic property? Well, let's take a look, for example, at the purple pigment that comes from one of my favorite sources, one of the snails. This is a Murex trunculus or Hexaplex trunculus, pigment that comes from it, the reddish purple pigment, which has a bunch of indigoids. This is the indigo skeleton. It has brominated and related indigoids, also indirubin. It gives you a very nice separation, this technique of the various components, whatever it is, whether it's in medicine or whether it's in environmental analyses or in dye analyses. You get this very nice separation of, let's say, about 10 different components that are in this particular purple pigment. And the chromatographic property that it gives you is a retention time, the time that it takes for the component to come out of the column, the separation column. Okay, and you can do wonderful quantitative analyses with this particular chromatogram. You can take a look at these approximately 10 different colorants that are in this pigment or any mixture of dyes. You can do look at the yellows, the isotins, the brominated, and etc. And indigo, of course, that's in there, and indirubin, which is red. You can take a look at the monobromo indigo, which is a very important component, as well as some of the indirubinoids, the brominated ones, and dibromo indigo, the common denominator of all purple pigments from all snails, as well as some other isomers of brominated indirubins and dibromo indirubin, et cetera, Anyway, you can do a very nice multi-component distribution of that, which is very nice and looks very pretty on a slide too. Besides a chromatographic property with HPLC, you also get a spectrometric property. You can get the wavelength, the characteristic wavelength lambda, at maximum absorption, both in the ultraviolet and visible parts of the spectrum. So you can have alizarin and purpurin from madder. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Carminic acid from insect, flavocarmesic, carmesic acid, again from insects, and indigo from a bunch of places. So, and these are approximate colors of these dyes also. So together with the chromatographic property and spectrometric property, you can pretty much pinpoint what dye you have. Obviously, if it's an unknown, then mass spectrometry comes into the picture, which adds an additional third factor in order to be a chemical detective and identify the unknown. Okay, we are talking about now natural organic dyestuff sources. We are talking about flora and fauna, various plants, and from the animal kingdom, insects and sea snails. I'm going to give you just a few case studies of purples from these worlds. Let's take a look at botanical purples first. Now, I'm sure that at least most of you, if not all, know that the most common purple that was produced from plants was a double dyeing or an over dyeing with red and blue, just like paints. Red and blue will give you purple. Obviously, if you have more red, you'll get reddish purple. If you have more blue, you get bluish purple. But of course, the most common red dye is obviously madder, Rubia tinctorum, of which there are a whole bunch of hydroxyanthraquinones. The leading ones are alizarin, which is orangey, and purpurin, as the name implies, purplish. And together with indigo or indigo tin, if you want to describe the pigment, which is this particular structure, it is most probably, well, in the ancient Near East from the Roman times, let's say, and before, it was probably from woad, Isotis tinctorum, because that was native to the Middle East. What's interesting, not only was it native to the Middle East or the ancient Near East, it was also native to Europe, as you know. Okay, this was the most common. And to give you a case study, let's go to Masada. Let's climb up Herod's fortress in the Judean desert. And you have this very lovely textile fragment. Now, many of you have looked at textiles, ancient textiles, nearly 2,000-year-old. Some of them are unbelievable. Some of them, the colors are unbelievable. They look like they were dyed not 2,000 years ago, but yesterday. Now, what is interesting, just from this one sample, is the following. We're going to see a caveat in a few moments. When I analyzed the ground, the orange, the salmon red background of this particular textile, yes, it was produced by madder, dyer's madder, Rubia tinctorum, and there was alizarin in there and purpurin, but considerably more alizarin, as you would have suspected, than purpurin. But then when I looked at this purple notch band, this purplish one, of course, there's indigo in there, again, probably from woad, and madder, a red colorant. But in this particular purple band, in which there was alizarin and purpurin, but there was more purpurin than alizarin, more purpurin than alizarin. Well, there is a plant that has purpurin and alizarin, more purpurin than alizarin, and that is called wild madder, Rubia peregrina, which was also native to the ancient Near East. Now well, okay, now let's go to the next slide. Basically, the caveat over here is, and time again, what I have found in analyzing these ancient Near East textiles is that if madder was used, and the dyer only wanted to produce red dyings, then he used an alizarin-rich madder, which was Rubia tinctorum, typically. However, if the dyer was interested in getting purple colors together with indigo, he or she would use a madder that was already richer in the purplish component, that is more purpurin. So I say that in what I have found in double dyed purple dyings, the madder that was used for the purple dye was a purpurin rich, which is wild madder. yes, there is a subtle question here. Was the dyer able to take regular matter, dyer's matter, and perhaps enrich it with purpurine, get more purpurine out of it than alizarin? It's a good question. I'm not so sure if that was the possible case and not destroying some of the dye. But if anybody has ever analyzed Roman period, let's say, double dyings that give you purple where a matter was used, if you saw more alizarin than purpurine, I would love to know about it. Please write to me in the middle of the night whenever you want. Let's take a look at some of the insects, entomological purples, this nice smiling ladybug. Okay, again, let's take a look at near the Dead Sea, south of the Dead Sea, actually, in a desert, Arava, in the desert area, along a way station along the spice route from the Nabatean capital of Petra to Gaza and the Mediterranean, and then onwards to other ports and other places. This is a topographical view, helicopter view. Perched up on top over here is a very nice fort, has some very nice archaeology, a hot tub you can do over here in the desert. It gets very hot in the summer, nice to cool off in the hot tub over here. Okay, but one of the things that I looked at, one of the textiles was, again, sometimes you learn many principles by analyzing just one textile. Yes, of course, you have to see if it repeats itself by analyzing others to see if there is a consistency or constancy in what I've just said about double dye purple dyings from plants and what I'm about to say here. Now, this very nice purple band, I saw that there was carmesic acid only. Tried and tried and tried. I could not get flavocarmesic acid, no matter how concentrated it was. There was no flavocarmesic acid. I said, whoa, whoa, why am I bringing that into the picture? First of all, if there is carmesic acid, well, obviously, as the name implies, it was obviously produced from the kermes insect and breeding on oak trees, as you can see these nice reddish larvae from internet picture. Now, modern kermes dyings will give you an orangey red, which is a scarlet, an orangey red. It gives you an orangey red because there's a nice orangey component in there, flavocarmesic acid, about 20% roughly of the dye component, and carmesic acid, which is purplish, interestingly, about 80%. So overall effect with an aluminum mordant, you will get this kind of orange. But I got a purple, only carmesic acid, which is purplish. What does that mean? When I analyzed others, there aren't many insect dyings, but when I looked at what I did and what others have found, like Wooters, for example, in some of his analyses, I graphed, again, it's not a statistical graph, it's only a few samples. I looked at the decomposition of flavocarmesic acid, the orangey component, over time, over the archaeological time frame. Now, this graph is percent FK flavocarmesic. In modern times, in the 20th or 21st century, to round it off, nice round number, 20th, there's about 20% FK flavocarmesic acid. Analyses that were done by others over the centuries showed the quantity of flavocarmesic being reduced until the sample, for example, that I analyzed, and besides that one, others, where in 0th century, in other words, 2,000 years ago, there is no flavocarmesic acid. In which case, this is a very important caveat in general. What does this mean? It means that if kermes, and I've analyzed other kermes insects, not just Kermes vermilio. I've looked at other species of kermes. Did I look at all of them in the world? No, but enough to know that in kermes, there should be flavocarmesic, modern, that is, and carmesic acid. What does this mean? And a modern dye will give you an orangey. It means what you see today is not what they saw yesterday. In other words, today, 2,000 years later, we see it more purplish than perhaps it was way back when, 2,000 years ago, which could have been a bit more orangey than what we see today. This will be a very nice doctorate, nice work to do. Look at flavochromic acid and see how it degrades over time. Okay, let's take another case study, mixed entomological and botanical purples, of which there are a number of examples. I only give you the weird examples, of course. Let's go now to the Dead Sea, and let's vacation over there in a nice resort, nice luxury hotels along the Dead Sea, in a late Byzantine fortress, early 7th century, that you see right over here, right across from these luxury hotels, about 15-minute walk up the hill. And by the way, the Dead Sea, just to give you a little tidbit, the average salinities, typical seawater is about 3.5% salinity. In the Dead Sea, it's about 8 to 10 times as much in the Dead Sea. You go in there, you float. You cannot drown. Actually, that's not completely true. You can actually drown in the Dead Sea, even though you float. Don't try it at home. Well, you can't. You have to go to the Dead Sea. If you're lying face down, obviously, with your face in the water and trying to breathe, you have to get your head up. You have to stand up. If you push your legs down, the buoyancy of the Dead Sea is so high that it fights back. It's very hard to stand in the Dead Sea. So to flip yourself over, you have to really make a big effort in order to flip over. Anyway, Ein Bokek, the spring of Bokek, what do we, okay, this is a nice fort overlooking the luxury hotel. There was this unassuming textile, and again, I repeat what I just said before, from unassuming textiles, nice textiles or simple textiles, you sometimes learn a lot. Here we take a look at this simple textile, and for this simple textile, we see a red patch. This red patch, when I analyzed it, they first sent me a sample, it was the warp sample, and I found matter in there, big deal. But when I looked at the patch in person, it looked like more crimsony up close, and I didn't understand why matter would give you that kind of crimsony look. Didn't make any sense. And lo and behold, when you analyze it, when I analyze the warp, yes, the warp is matter, but and you can see the nice dull red. Well, it's not so nice. You see a dull red color on the warp threads. There was more alizarin than purprin. Of course, matter was used for that, but on the weft, when you analyze the weft, you get carminic acid. And based on the geographical area, we're talking about the Dead Sea, the closest one is not Polish cochineal, an American cochineal, The closest one is called either Armenian or Turkish or Ararat cochineal, which of course gives you a carminic acid. So take a look at this. It's a weft face fabric. And what's amazing is that the weaver and the dyer combined together, especially the weaver, wanted to produce a crimson, a reddish purple effect, but he didn't want to waste the expensive insect dye on the warp that you don't really see. But he didn't want undyed warp yarns. He still, or she, again, he or she, sorry, wanted reddish warp yarns. Again, if some of them stick out, then use a cheaper dye stuff. So this is a very nice combination. In other words, the caveat here is you make sure to analyze both the warp and the weft of dyed textiles. And here's a combination that's really strange, and I don't understand why they did it. From a tunic, it looks nice bluish purple, a little bit more illumination. You could see some reddishness in here, purplish, and some bluish aspects of these cords. What was amazing when you look in the microscope is the following. Each yarn is composed of a blue-violet yarn that you can see over here, plied with a purple yarn. You could see them mixed together in this picture and this picture. However, Each blue-violet yarn itself is composed of two-plied blue-violet yarns. You can see it almost looks like the head of a serpent, a snake. You could see two blue-violet yarns here, and in this picture also. That's not all. Even the purple yarns themselves were plied. Each purple yarn was twisted together with another purple yarn. It turns out when I analyze these dyes, these dyeings, in the purple yarn, it was the typical madder indigo combination, but once again, purpurine much more than alizarin. Again, I say wild madder together with woad. And the blue-violet yarn, that was the strangest of all. It's blue. Blue, obviously indigo from woad. Again, most probably from woad, not the indigo plant, Indigofera. But there was kermesic acid, which means from a Kermes insect. Kermesic acid is purplish, but it's a blue. Why, in heaven's name, if you want to get an overall purple effect of these twisted things, do you bother using Kermes for this? It doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. One possibility is perhaps the dyer used the vat that was previously used for Kermes dyes. I don't know. It's a possibility. Okay, that's what this is. But my favorite dyes are the molluscan or malacological purples winking at each other. This is the purple pigment that's produced, and take a look at the various snails along the Mediterranean that you could have had that can produce purple pigments. Many of you know this. There were 3 species. What was known as Murex brandaris, today Bolinus brandaris, Murex trunculus or Hexaplex trunculus, and Purpurhemastoma, Stramonita hemastoma, with a beautiful natural red lipstick along the mouth over here. Now, some of these were not just used, these dyings, obviously purple, not just for kings, Caesars, emperors, for royalty. Also, they were in biblical colors that the Bible describes the high priest as wearing various purple dyed vestments. This royal purple was known as argaman in the Hebrew Bible. And there was also what's known as biblical blue. It's actually bluish purple, techelet, also for the high priest. Now, in order to do analyses, you have to get the samples. So I went with a number of friends to the northern Mediterranean, which you see over here. We got a nice sample of trunculus snails. We did analyses on these, but before we do analyses, you have to extract the pigment. There is no pigment in the living snail. We have to surgically operate on the snails, expose the hypobranchial gland. When we expose the fluid in the hypobranchial gland, it undergoes into the final purple pigment, which can contain all of these components in various ratios that I talked about. Now, even though there could be about 10 different colorants in there, the main dyes in the purple pigments are the 3 indigoids. Indigo itself, just like in plants, same chemical structure, dibromo indigo, which is a reddish purple, and a color in between, which is monobromo indigo, these 3 colors. Now, what I have found in analyzing all of these particular snails from different parts of the world is that not all snails were created equal. It's not a democratic society in the snail world. What can I do? What happened is this: the trunculus is different from all the other snails. All the other snails that I've analyzed, the Brandaris, Hemastoma, and the others from the Atlantic Ocean, Japan, the main component, by and large, is dibromo indigo. That's why they're reddish purple. However, in the Hexaplex trunculus, there are these 3 components that I described before: indigo blue, dibromo indigo reddish purple, and monobromo indigo, a violet kind of color. And there are 2 different types of Murex trunculus, same species. I would call them, quote, subspecies of the trunculus species. I'm afraid to use the word actually subspecies because I'm not a zoologist. And I've been told that the word subspecies has a very definite definition in zoology, and they may not be actual subspecies. So let's call them different types. One gives you a reddish purple, which is dibromo indigo rich. It's reddish purple. And the other one is a bluish purple or violet because it has a lot of indigo in it besides these three. So these two are very important. And I have found purple as a paint pigment. I know in the Aegean, purple as a paint pigment is found from nearly 4,000 years ago. Lovely saffron collectors, beautiful. I have looked at an object that belonged to King Darius I, or known as King Darius the Great. They're always called the Great. What else? From about 2,500 years ago, this beautiful marble jar, it's in the Bible Lands Museum in Jerusalem, and it's dated to 486 BCE. How do we know that? First of all, it has three cuneiform inscriptions, Old Persian, Elamite, and Akkadian, plus it has a fourth language on it, Egyptian hieroglyphics. I call it a Persian Rosetta Stone, 2,500 years old. And within, as many of you would know, within the cartouche is the king's name, and his name is Darius, or Daryavaush in the old language, Darius. And I love this, this is what the inscription says, living eternally, year 36 to his reign. Living eternally, he did not live eternally. Not only that, year 36, that's when he died, which is 486 BCE. Anyway, if you take a look, there are lots of purple residues on it, which I analyzed. Doesn't mean that it's real purple pigment, but when you analyze it, okay, we get the nice chromatogram, you get dibromo indigo. When you do the component chart, you see that there's a lot of dibromo indigo, monobromo indigo. This comes from a trunculus that's dibromo indigo rich. Because of the monobromo indigo there, that's only in trunculus snails. But purple is a textile dye I found in two amazing pieces. Royal purple, again, let's go to the Masada Real Purple Textiles. On top of Masada, there's a throne room, which was built by King Herod, again, sometime in the 1st century BCE. There's a throne room. You can see the notches, the holes here, as if not as if, it's probably a canopy over there. This is where his court, the royal court, where he met whoever wanted to see him. Anyway, there are coins of King Herod, Herodou Vasilios. Please, anybody's Greek speaker, excuse me. Herodou Vasilios of King Herod, and a beautiful purple pigment, purple dyeing. And again, when you analyze it, you get this kind of separation of beautiful dyes. And under a magnification, high illumination, you get this royal Herodian cloak. And you get, of course, much more dibromo indigo. Once again, a dibromo indigo rich trunculus was used for this royal purple. Okay, one of the most exciting pieces that I've analyzed, a biblical bluish purple, which is known as Tchelet, the holiest, the most sacred of biblical colors, was from a sample that gave you these components. Look at the amount of indigo, monobromo indigo, okay, violet, and look at the amount of dibromo, the indigo, dibromo indigo. Overall, you could imagine what the color of the textile is like, and this is what it looked like. It is a dark blue purple, the same color, very similar to lapis lazuli, the blue stone, which is not just blue, it's blue purple. And in conclusion, if you want to know a little bit more of the archaeology of the purple, I gave a talk in ASOR some time ago. And also I gave a TEDx talk, should you kiss with lipstick? I will not tell you the answer. Of course, today you have to kiss with a mask on. Should you kiss with lipstick? And you can look it up. And that is all, folks. Thank you very much. Obrigado. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Svi. It's
I hope
always
I pronounced it okay.
You did, as usual. And your presentations are always awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.